Good evening, everyone. It's Paul Kigavine at the Garland County Library, and I'm with Marsalis Weatherspoon, who is the president of the NAACP Hot Springs branch number 6013, and we are somehow already on episode number 7 of the Perceptions of Color series. Can you believe it's been 7 episodes already, Marsalis?
No, sir. It's been a whirlwind, but here we are, episode 7,
We started back in October,
September.
September. Okay. Well, you should. If you haven't already seen them, please go back and check out those previous episodes after you watch this one. There's a huge variety of topics. And tonight's topic is the title of this event is The Power in the Pen, Celebrating Black Women in Literature. And we have a very special guest who you might recognize or have heard of. So I'm going to let Marsalis introduce our special guest here. So I'm passing the torch to you, as always.
Again, thank you, Paul. Again, welcome to Perceptions of Color. This is episode 7, and this is the month of March. And in the month of March, we celebrate Women's History Month. And so we're very excited about that. And we're also excited to discuss this topic tonight, which is Black women in literature, the power of the pen. And I have a very capable guest today to discuss this topic. Her name is Miss Janis Kearney, and Miss Kearney is an author, publisher, and writing instructor. Born to Southeast Arkansas cotton sharecroppers, she attended Gould Public Schools and graduated from the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville with a Bachelor's of Art in Journalism. She served 9 years as a project manager and public affairs director in Arkansas state government. She served briefly as a managing editor for civil rights legend Daisy Bates' historic Arkansas State Press newspaper before purchasing and becoming publisher of the newspaper in 1988 upon Bates' retirement. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I want to welcome Miss Janis Kearney.
Hello. Hi, Marsalis.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for inviting me here tonight.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We're just so delighted to have you and honored. You're just an awesome person. You've blazed an awesome trail, which we'll get into. And I was just reading this. It says 1988. Just a fun fact, I was born in 1988.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So
that shows you how old I am, but that's okay. I'm still here. That's the good thing.
Awesome. So, just tell a little bit about yourself. I know just from reading your bio that you were a diarist for President Bill Clinton. And tell us what is a diarist?
A diarist is a living, biographer of I created a diary or biography, living biography of the presidency during the Clinton administration. It was the first time in 1994 is when President Bill Clinton, who happens to be a native of Hot Springs, Arkansas, decided that he wanted a personal diarist for his presidency. So I applied for that job and got it. And my role was to create a day-to-day document that shared what went on in the presidency, what was happening, what were the issues, what were the things that he had to deal with as a president, who were the people that were a part of his circle, who were the people who came into the White House, like the heads of country from all over the world. All of these things I was able to kind of be the fly on the wall and, kind of take diary notes and keep documentation on all of that.
That is awesome. That is truly awesome. And you and I spoke on the importance of journalists covering political figures and how Black women have played an integral part in that process. And we said there'll be another topic for another day. But yeah, tell us, just give us a little bit more of your background. You've given us, provided us a presentation. So let's just delve right into that.
Okay.
and Paul's our tech person, so just tell him what to
Sure,
do.
sure. I can begin at the beginning, and Varner Road was the beginning. That's where I was born. And as you mentioned, Marsalis, my parents were sharecroppers, which is they worked the land that was not owned by them, uh, but they were able to make a living off that piece of land that they were given and the share of the profits that came from that land. My parents did that for over 50 years. They had 19 children, and all of us were part of that whole system. We worked the land with my parents, and we went to public school in Gould, Arkansas, um, and we all did well. My parents pushed that. Education was like something that they definitely pushed. And all of us ended up graduating from college except one. So we knew early on that education was kind of the key for us getting out of the role that we were playing as sharecroppers children. So education played a huge role during my childhood and into college at the University of Arkansas.
That's awesome. And thank you for sharing this with us because forgive my ignorance. Up to now, the only thing I knew about Varner is that there was a Supermax facility there. And so
Yeah.
to know that there's
And
such an
it's always been,
operation,
yeah, it was there when I was growing up. So that's how long it's been there. And one of the stories I tell in my first memoir is that I could remember we'd be coming from Barner Road to the school, and you would see a whole field of men in white working the fields. And, they were prisoners. And that was it was an amazing sight to see. And it wasn't until later that you realized the whole dichotomy of that. But yeah, we lived very close to Cummins Prison Farm.
right? And again, that's another topic for another night. The extension of slavery going into the prison industrial complex.
Hmm.
But
Absolutely.
again, to have somebody so awesome come from such humble beginnings is truly amazing. So keep going.
Sure. So my parents, that's my parents, Thomas and Ethel Kearney. My mom was 19 when she married my dad. My dad was 26 years old, and they made a life for themselves out of basically nothing. But they became community leaders. They became school leaders. They both served on PTA as presidents. They were church leaders in the community. Very involved with their children, involved with the community, and involved with the church. They were really amazing people.
Awesome. Awesome. All right.
That is my family, and that's during an annual family reunion. And I'm thinking we were at church during that time. Each year we have a family reunion, and part of that reunion is always to go back to our church, Rankin Chapel Church, where we all joined church. We were all baptized at that church, and my dad was Sunday school superintendent for over 60 years. So that is most of my family, not all my family, but it's most of my family right there
Mm. I
with
do
him.
rec- I do recognize your brother. I think I did meet your brother, and he's an attorney. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think most of those up there are attorneys.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah,
And
two are judges, and the rest are attorneys, except
right.
one or two. Hmm.
Wow. And you're touching on something that is a recurring theme throughout these discussions, being the importance of faith and
Yes.
how fundamental that is in uh, the life of somebody that goes on to do great things, especially in our community. And just
Hmm.
touch on that, how the importance of faith.
Oh, yes. Just extremely important, especially, it was so important to my parents because, like I said, they were extremely poor. They had all these children that they had to bring up. And they were sharecroppers. So kind of three strikes against you, but they had their faith and they leaned on their faith and they were true believers and they were some of the most active Christians that you could ever want to meet. And they poured that into us. So we grew up believing and leaning on that same faith. And we didn't know it when we were growing up, but when we got older, we realized that a lot of the things that could have happened to us probably didn't happen to us because of that faith and because my parents prayed always, and they just taught us all the values based on Christianity and based on morality. They taught us the things that kept us on the straight and narrow. So faith is extremely, and I'm not going to say there's any one faith because there's lots of people who believe in different faiths, but I believe just the belief in a higher power and someone greater than yourself. I think that is extremely important as human beings.
Definitely. And I might be jumping ahead, but Lincoln County, I know a little of Arkansas geography, and I'm knowing that Lincoln County is a lot closer to Jefferson County than where you attended school, which is the University of Arkansas at Fayetteville.
Right.
And it seems like with you coming from an agricultural background and being so close to AM&N College or whatever it was called at the time, was that a strategic decision to attend Fayetteville instead of Pine Bluff?
I think it was strategic in the fact that my parents knew that we already had two brothers up at the university, and my sister and I were going to college, and they wanted us to go to the college that my brothers were already going to.
Sure.
So that's how that happened. Both of my brothers, I think, got football and academic scholarships to college. So my parents felt safer having us go where they were already enrolled, and it worked out really well.
Well, that makes sense. That makes sense. Good. Let's keep going.
So I don't know whether your listeners know who this is without me saying, but this is the amazing Daisy Bates and her husband, Elsie Bates. And we all know what roles she played in education for Arkansas. And really, she became a leader for the world. People watched her and admired her all over the world for her role that she played during the 1957 integration crisis, Central High integration crisis. And before that, of course, it was the newspaper she and her husband started in 1942. And this was something that became their baby. It became so much a part of their lives and their passion. It was their way of giving back to the community also, because they shared the stories that we African Americans wouldn't have known about that was happening not only in the state, but happening all over the country. That's what the newspaper did. And it was so critical to the struggle and to the movement during that time. So it played an important role. And the sad thing was during the time that she was NAACP president and she was heading up the struggle for Central High integration, the white advertisers pulled their advertisements from her newspaper and they ended up having to close the newspaper. So that was really a hard blow for them, but they kept going. Mr. Bates continued to work with NAACP until he passed away. And Mrs. Bates did a number of things. She wrote her book. She's a writer. I mean, she became an author, and she also started work down in a place that's very close to where I lived, down in Mitchellville. She opened an office called the OEO, Office of Economic Opportunity. And she worked there for about 9 years, I guess, 7 to 9 years. And she helped Mitchellville just develop, become maybe not a thriving, but definitely a operating city, town. So she played a big role in that. She was able to use her name and her leverage to get things done down in Mitchellville from, even from the White House and from government. They did things because of who she was and what she had done. So she was my hero. I tell people the story about me meeting her in Mitchellville when I was 16 years old, going down and interviewing for a summer worker. And she gave me a typing test and I flunked it. And she told me to go back to school and take typing again and come back to her and interview. And I didn't come back. I was 11th grade, going into 11th grade. So the next year I worked for the county. So I didn't go back. And I did not see her again until 1987 when I went to interview for the managing editor of the newspaper that she had started back in 1984.
Did she remember you, or did you say, "Hey, remember me"? Or
I said yes. I told her you did not give me that job when I was 16 years old, and now I'm back and I can type.
that is awesome. And I wish I had known that we should have had a map of Arkansas to get all these little locations that people might not be aware of, because I know where
Right.
Mitchellville is. That's outside of Dumas.
Yeah.
So all of this is on the southeastern side of the state that we're
Yes,
talking.
the Delta.
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely, the Delta.
Mhm.
So yeah, how did that feel being amongst such greatness? Like, did you know in the moment like this was so historic?
Yes, I did. I did. When I met her, I knew it. My dad had told me about her already because he's a great history buff, and he had told me how great she was and what she had done and all of that. So I was really nervous going in to interview with her, but I felt the greatness. I felt that I was in the midst of greatness for sure. And I left there saying I would love to be Daisy Bates. I'd love to be someone like Daisy Bates um, in my life. I just never imagined that one of these days that, the circle would come back and I would end up working for her.
Look at Paul. Yes.
That is wonderful that you would do that.
Yes. So yeah.
Yeah, we're down in the southeast Arkansas. Uh, Dumas, Mitchellville isn't on there, I don't think.
No. That
No, and I'm not sure Gould is even on there.
right. Well, Star
I
City
can't.
is the
Yeah, I
county
see
seat.
Star City. That's the
Yes,
county.
that's the county seat of Lincoln County.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah. Guild used to be on most of the maps, but I guess they took it off.
wow, yeah, I don't know what year this is, but yeah, so that's what we're talking about, the southeastern corner. Thank you so much,
Yes,
Paul.
thank you.
Awesome. Well, what I was thinking about is it's kind of funny how she was able to impart to you, and now you're imparting to other young women through your work with your organization. Which
Mhm.
again, I'm getting ahead of myself, but let's just keep going and see what we see, and maybe we'll
Okay,
get there.
okay. Oh yeah, that's my graduation from Gould High School, 1971. Long time before you were born, Marcellus.
Yes, ma'am.
But that was my high school. I went to segregated elementary school.
Hmm.
And then middle school, they came up with something called freedom of choice. I don't know whether you've heard of it, but my parents wanted us to go to the white school because of the opportunities and better, books and equipment and everything, buildings. So there were about 50 families, Black families, that went to the white school, and we were part of that. And and then in ninth grade, they quote unquote integrated all the schools, and definitely unquote, because I think we had maybe 20 whites in the public school, in Gould Public Schools. That's when the private schools started popping up everywhere.
Correct. So
Mhm.
de jure integration, but de facto
Yeah,
segregation.
yeah.
And so, You don't know how on point you are, because we talked about that a lot last month with Ms. Cheryl, coming out of segregation and going into integration. And we're going to be talking about that next month when we talk about Garland County
Oh,
and
wow.
being 30 years removed from that deseg order. And
Mm-hmm.
everything just bears witness that
Yeah.
what you're saying is definitely the case.
Mm-hmm.
And we just had another conversation about Langston High School and how it was the historically Black school in Hot
Yes.
Springs, and that experience and what those students had to go through, like you said, being quote unquote integrated.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Mm-hmm.
on point. Let's keep going.
Mm-hmm. So that's just kind of saying that when I left Gould in 1971, I went off to college, and that was my segue into the world. That was the last time I ever really lived in Gould, lived at home. I've been back and forth, stayed for a while, and all that, because my dad was there for a long time. My mom died early, but my dad lived a long time. So I never really lived there for any length of time. That's when my journey into the world started, once I left Gould in 1971.
Well, that's a good segue. When you started your writing career, or maybe it was sometime in school, I don't know. But when did you know, or when did somebody maybe notice that there was something there in terms of a writing gift?
I think my fourth grade teacher is the one that confirmed it for me. I always felt that I could write, and I loved reading, so I knew that I was a person who loved books, and I thought I could be a writer. But in fourth grade, I had a teacher who kind of confirmed that and told me that I could be a writer and that I wrote very, very well. And she would always suggest books for me to read. And I think that's when I knew for sure. But I always tell people that my love for writing and books and stories comes from my dad, who was an oral storyteller. And he was an amazing storyteller. And I just fell in love with stories. And from his telling them, I decided I wanted to write stories, and I wanted to write his story because he would always tell us stories about his childhood and the things that he experienced. And he had a really amazing childhood. So I always knew that one day I would write his story.
Are those stories extant somewhere?
Uh, they're in a book that I wrote. My dad's book is one of the books I've written over the last 20 years. Uh, his book and my memoir, Cotton Field of Dreams, both of those, and you'll see them at the end of this. You'll see the books. Um, but yeah, his was definitely what I had planned to write first. But then I decided, well, let me write the memoir about growing up on Varner Road and the experiences of that. So I wrote that first.
Wonderful. What else do we got? Let's see.
Yeah, that was the University of Arkansas, the Hill.
Yeah.
That was home for me for a long time.
So yeah, what was your experience as was that a novel thing, a Black woman in your
You get going to school there.
sure.
It had just kind of gotten over the hump of being segregated, and there were Black students there by the time I got there. The year before I went to school there, one of our instructors took us up on the campus to, walk around and all that. So I actually got a chance to meet quite a few African American students, so I knew it was integrated. I mean, there were still experiences that shouldn't have happened in 1971 and the years that I was there. Uh, but Fayetteville, where I went to school, was considered a pretty liberal, inclusive overall. But you ask different students, they'll have different stories. So I can only tell my story that I didn't experience day to day anything, you know, discriminatory,
Right.
but I knew that there were things happening from time to time.
Awesome. It sounds like a very, shaping experience. So,
It was a shaping experience. It's where I grew up because, I lived a really sheltered life on Varner Road. So this just opened my eyes to a lot of things. People from all over the world came there, students. So I got a chance to meet people from all over.
well, what I can say is going to Henderson in Arkadelphia, that was my first time realizing that I was from Arkansas. And let me, because uh, growing up in Hot Springs, it's a kind of different cultural experience than you have all these people coming from all of these rural areas,
Uh-huh.
and then kind of being meeting these people for the first time. And it sounds like what your experience was. It was more of a liberal, like you said,
Mhm,
more cosmopolitan,
mhm,
metropolitan maybe experience.
mhm,
I don't want
mhm.
to characterize your experience, but but it sounds, in any event, sounds like a culture shock.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It was a culture shock because I was from like Southeast Arkansas. Wow, no, it was nothing like what I saw uh, because there wasn't a lot of interaction uh, in Gould as
Mm,
far as the races. And so that was different. And the other thing, I knew very, very little about other cultures and other races other than black and white. So
mm,
that's when I first learned there's lots of other people, other cultures out there.
wow. Well, let's keep going.
Okay,
Nine.
I worked 9 years with the state of Arkansas. When I left the university with my journalism degree, I was actually offered a job with the Arkansas Democrat. At the time, it was just the Democrat. It wasn't the
Mm,
Democrat Gazette.
mm,
And that was great that you would be offered a job with them. But I was married at the time and had a son, and we really needed more money.
mm.
So I did not take that job, and I went to work for the state. And did a couple of years as a manager for a CETA program, but after that, I became a director of information, kind of a public affairs for the state of Arkansas
Sure.
type role. So I did that for about 7 years.
Awesome. Let's keep going.
And that is when the circle came full measure. When in 1987, I was at the Migrant Education, Department of Migrant Education, and someone told me that Daisy Bates had reopened her newspaper and she needed a managing editor because her managing editor was going to law school. So I just decided, okay, maybe this is what I'm supposed to be doing now. So I went over and talked to her and gave her my resume and all that. And uh, we talked for a while. And of course, I did remind her that she had talked to me before. But I went back, and a day or so later, her managing editor called me and said she wanted to hire me. She wanted me to go to work for her. So I did, and I worked for her as her managing editor for 3 months. And then she came in one day and said she was going to retire and sell the newspaper. And I was like flabbergasted because I jokingly say I had left my good state job and went to work for a newspaper with the hopes of being there and, learning a lot and all that with Daisy Bates. But then she was selling the newspaper and leaving. So I took it a step further after talking with my husband about it. And I came back and asked her to sell it to me. And she did. She sold the newspaper to me, and I ran the newspaper. I became the publisher in 1988 and ran it for about 5 years before I went to work for Bill Clinton.
Wow. That's amazing. And again, this whole journalism piece is a tributary unto itself. So,
It absolutely is, and I've talked a lot about the importance of Black newspapers and newspapers with with a target audience. I believe in that. I mean, I know some people say, well, why do you need that? Because you've got the mainstream. You need it. We need it. We know today more than ever we need it. And back in the day when she and Mr. Bates started the newspaper, it was like a godsend. Uh, it just kept African Americans all over the country informed about where are we in this civil rights struggle. And they felt connected. Uh, it was so important to our well-being, our sense of well-being. And it, unfortunately, in the 70s and 80s, with integration, again, a lot of the newspapers fell by the wayside. And also economics did, that was a big part of it as well.
Right. And then just in general, we've seen that trend in journalism where, there's been a shift to digital content. And so a lot of newspaper operations are just shuttering in general.
Most are.
You're right.
Most
exactly.
are. They're either shuttering or they're going online, which is, there's a value to that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But there's nothing like getting that newspaper in your hands at your house. And the connections that you make with that newspaper. I learned so much when I ran the newspaper about things I didn't even know I wanted to know about. But just being in the role of a newspaper publisher, you have to know a lot about a lot of different things. So I learned a lot doing that.
The last thing I'll say is that, we're underrepresented in terms of people that have careers in journalism, and just our perspective,
Absolutely.
It's not really out there. And so it's critical to have
Yes, it is.
people that can tell our story.
Absolutely. So. And you're just seeing that change now. You're seeing that a little bit change, especially on some of these networks. Some of the news reporters are feeling comfortable or allowed to speak to things that they are part of their lives, part of who they are.
Correct. And I lied. I said that was the last thing I was going to say, but I'll add that, sometimes there's a question in journalism of whether you should be objective or subjective. But when we're covering these issues that affect us, I think definitely we should give our vantage and our on it for the context and all of that good stuff. But again, another
subject, another day.
Correct. Let's keep going because, again, we could just keep going. Okay.
That's just me and Daisy Bates. That was when I first took over as publisher, and I was at her house. She was giving me, this is how you do it. That's what that was all about. And there was a photographer who's a very famous, Brian Linker, I think his name is, and Lanker. And he came and took photos of Daisy. And that was one of the ones that he took.
Wow. Well, you look the same.
Oh, please.
To me,
you're so kind.
Good. Wonderful. Let's keep going. Okay.
There was a foundation between the Arkansas State Press. It was actually it was funded by the Southwestern Bell. Do you remember Southwestern Bell?
I do remember Southwestern Bell.
Yeah. So that was what that was about. Every year we gave maybe 4 scholarships to young people all over the state of Arkansas. And that was really important to Mrs. Bates. So she got a chance to meet a lot of young people and help a lot of young people. Most of the people that you see there are with Southwestern Bell, were with Southwestern Bell at the time.
Wow. Yeah, we had an office downtown on Exchange Street for Southwestern. Yes, ma'am. Ooh, that takes me back.
Yes, it does.
Let's keep going.
That is a picture of actually when I was at the newspaper and I was interviewing Bill Clinton about what I'd heard about him running for president. And that was in 91, and he hadn't announced yet. that he was running for president. So I kind of got him to talk about it without talking about it,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about his politics and talking about, his journey and his role, his being called, at the time he wasn't a president, so it wasn't the first Black president, but he was definitely considered a different kind of Southern governor.
Right.
For his role in appointing so many African Americans to high positions. So I did that article. That was actually, we had a magazine at the time called Little Rock in View, and I was interviewing him for that magazine.
Mm-hmm. So what was the sense on the ground at that time? Was he a long shot? Did he have any chance, or what did people think at the time?
Most people thought he didn't have a chance, except the people who were very close to him and knew how hard he worked and how smart he was and how dogged he was about something if he wanted it. So we thought he had a chance, but you ask anybody else in any part of the country, they did not think he had a chance, Black or white.
Right. And like my pastor says, now we know the rest of the story.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, let's keep going. Okay.
Okay, that is me with him at the White House as his diarist, and that's kind of what I did. Kind of shadowed him and took notes. There's my little paper and pen, and I don't remember what the meeting had been about, but we were discussing the meeting, whatever meeting it was.
Do you still use a paper and pen, or did you ever join us in the digital age? Or?
I am in the digital age. I use paper and pen if I'm sitting in a meeting or something. Yeah, I still take notes that way. But when I'm writing, I use the computer.
There's something about the tactile experience of just that pen and that paper still today.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You just convert it. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I love his colors. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Black and I see y'all are matching.
Cool. We can imagine, yeah.
Let's keep going. Okay.
And that's him getting into the digital age himself. He knew nothing about computers. They were teaching him how to send an email. Yes, it was just phenomenal. Yeah.
And who were these others in the photo?
Josh Gottbaum is actually a congressman now. He was a very junior staff member.
Wow.
And he's now a congressman up in Pennsylvania.
Wow.
And the other lady, she was in communications. I can't think of her name right now, but she was in communications.
Right. I'm trying to.
And that's me back there when I had a bunch of hair, bunch of black hair.
Awesome. Okay, I see these busts. I see Lincoln, and I'm gonna. Who is that? Harry Truman, maybe.
Truman. Mm-hmm. Okay. Truman was one of his favorites, and then there's Roosevelt.
Okay. Yes.
And I think there's a George Washington on the other side, and I think Martin Luther King may be back there somewhere.
Cool. I see Hillary in Chelsea.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Mm-hmm.
Let's keep going. Here we go.
Okay, circle of life. Okay, when I left the White House in 2001, that was when I started my writing journey, my writing life. And my very first book was The Cotton Field of Dreams. And that is my book about growing up down on Varna Road and all of the experiences of that. And I called it my love letter to my parents.
So this is the memoir.
Uh-huh.
Cool. Let's see what else we got. Wow.
Yeah, these are most of the books that I've either written or co-written or coached the authors. But the book up at on my left at the top is my book about my dad. Sundays with TJ. And it's full of stories that he shared with us all his life, all our lives. And there's one fiction. I've got another fiction that is going to be out soon, very soon. Um, Once Upon a Time, There Was a Girl. It's a murder mystery based on a real murder that took place in Arkansas. And the second in that series comes out this month.
Wow. So your fiction is got a nonfiction kind of.
Yeah, it's a fictionalized nonfiction.
I got you.
Yeah, but the second in the series is a fiction completely. The rest of those books are all nonfiction.
Mhm.
The Something to Write Home About is my book about the White House experience.
Mhm.
Conversations is an oral history of people who talked about Bill Clinton's legacy that I
Mhm.
went around the country interviewing. And he's in that as well. I interviewed him. Daisy Between a Rock and a Hard Place is about her. Um, I wrote several people's memoirs. Like most of these are people's memoirs. They wanted to write their stories.
Mhm.
And most of them are fascinating stories. They really are.
Awesome. So where can we pick these up?
Some of them you can purchase at Barnes and Noble. Some of them on Amazon. Some of them in bookstores. Here. And you can always go on my website, wowpublishing.org, uh, to purchase them as well.
Wonderful, wonderful, awesome. You were saying the historical fiction. It also made me think about Colson Whitehead and what
Yes.
he's doing with his books. So that's
Oh, he's an excellent writer. Yes.
awesome. Well, let's keep going.
I think there's only one more. And so I get to talk a little bit about Celebrate Maya project, which started in 2014. Um, a little small group of women came together and started Celebrate Maya project, including my wonderful friend, Cheryl Batts and Woody Davis. Um, so they're part of the founding board members, the founders of Celebrate Maya project. And we started because there wasn't a statewide effort to honor her life when she died. So we found a way to do that. And we reached out to the mayor of Stamps, who was Mayor Bright at the time, David Bright at the time, and we worked closely with him to plan a day of celebration for Dr. Maya Angelou. And it was a fantastic, amazing day of celebrating her life. People came from a lot of different places, and it was a really good program. And they dedicated the pond down in Stamps, Arkansas. They dedicated it to Maya Angelou because she talks about it in one of her books. And my understanding is that she started her writing poetry at that pond.
Another Arkansas place that if you've heard of Maya, you probably heard of Stamps. But
Yes,
other than
yes.
that, I've been to and through Stamps. I think that's Highway 82, if I'm not mistaken. But this was who knew that this was going to be an Arkansas geography lesson tonight as well. So the impact of Maya Angelou in literature, in particular Black literature, cannot be overstated.
No,
So for y'all to pay homage to her in such a way is awesome. And again, we touched on how you're able to impart to up and coming people and talk about that.
Yeah, one of the things our parents always taught us was to find a way to give back. No matter what you have, find a way to give back. I always tell the story of my mom, who, again, we didn't have anything, but my mom every year would put a few dollars in an envelope and send it down to a little college down in, I think it's Dermot, Arkansas. And because she felt this will help some child, help their education. That's how strongly she felt about the need for education for children. So they implored us to please, always find a way to give back. And that's what we do. I think all of us believe in that wholeheartedly. I've always found a way to, volunteer for different things, boards and things that have to do with children, especially. So the Celebrate Maya project was just one more step for that. I saw that as a way not only to honor Maya Angelou and to teach not only young people, but communities about who Maya Angelou is and what she stood for, but also to help with scholarships. We raise money for scholarships, and we give out academic scholarships as well as poetry awards. And we also, we go to the schools and we do curriculums, we do writing and poetry. And for the last 3 to 4 years, we've created a writing history workshop where students meet the elders in the community and interview them. And I know Cheryl does something like that as well there. They interview them, and then we allow them to write an essay about the what we call history makers in the communities, and that becomes part of a book. So I think we've published 4 books of students' work that we've done here in Pulaski County, we've done down in Southeast Arkansas, Eudora, Lake Village, and we've done in Mississippi County. So, and now we are getting ready to do that for a project that we're doing with Heifer International. We did the first part of it this last week or so, where we brought students in and they got to meet some really amazing people that work in different areas of the USDA, so in agriculture. So they will come back together and do a writing session and create essays on what they learned and what the presenters talked about. And in the summer, we'll have a book. We'll create a book around that. So I feel really good about that. I feel really good about my writing. We have an organization called the Read, Write, Share organization, which let me do a plug and say that April 16th, we'll have our 7th annual Read, Write, Share conference. It's going to be virtual again, but we invite anybody to join us. Go to Read, Write, Share, and you can register right on there. But we've been doing that for, again, 7 years. And that came out of what we heard people tell us, new writers, people who wanted to write, but they didn't know where they could go. They didn't feel comfortable in some of the settings that they were invited to. They wanted to share, they wanted to ask questions, and we wanted to create something to make new writers feel comfortable. So we created, my co-founder Iris Williams and myself created the Read, Write, Share Writers Weekend. And we started out by going up to the Windrock, to Petit Jean, and had our workshops there. And then we've moved back to the Little Rock area now.
Awesome.
So it's always something that you can do, always something you can do to give back.
Wonderful. And again, thank you and Ms. Batts and what you all do for historic preservation, because that intergenerational piece is so important, that the young people are poured into through that experience, as well as get those histories. Like you started off talking about the importance of capturing these stories, documenting them and getting it on paper. So I just thank you for everything that you've done through your organization and just throughout your career.
Thank you.
Before I get into the next piece, I'm going to see if Paul had any comments or questions out there from the audience.
I'll say we did. I think this is for one of the Perceptions of Color series, like everyone was just following along, and had a lot to share. So I didn't want to interrupt. Some of these were coming in as you're talking about specific slides. So Cicely says, "Good evening. So happy to get to hear and see Mrs. Kearney again. Hashtag phenomenal woman.
Thank you, Cicely.
And thankful for farming families. Hashtag Arkansas Delta Strong."
Oh, wow. Great, great.
Claudia says, "Wow, 19 children. That is wonderful, and love that you are sharing your background with us." And Cicely says, "Often pass there on the way to my grandparents' farm down the road in Dumas. Thanks so much for sharing your story." And such an awesome testament to faith and hardworking people.
Amen.
Cheryl Batts says, "Henry Glover Sr. was the paper boy to carry the Daisy Bates newspaper when he was a young man. He said it would come in on the train and he would distribute through the city."
Wow. See, that's a piece of history right there. Cheryl Batts loves the history. She's the historian.
Oh yeah, she's the queen of it.
Yes.
Let's see. She said, "This is a great book. I loved Cotton Field of Dreams."
Thank you.
So we've got a fan out there.
I have a few fans here. Claudia says, "I'm interested in the Jake Mosby story."
It's a phenomenal story.
Cicely says, "Yay for Celebrate My Project. Thanks for all you do.
Thank you.
The work you are doing is so important to our next generation of young leaders."
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
There's
Yeah.
a few other comments in there you might want to go and check out once this is over. But if anyone still watching has questions, get those in. But before we finish off tonight,
Yeah. So I just wanted to give a chance before we move on to the next section, which is why we're here today to discuss these Black women who have paved the way, and Janice Curry being one of them. And so, I'm going to be as chronological as possible, but we're going to start off with Phyllis Wheatley. Miss Kearney, tell us who was Phyllis Wheatley. Tell us a little bit about her.
Well, my understanding is she was the very first Black writer of note, and she was a slave, of course. And I think Henry Louis Gates actually has redone her book.
Mhm.
He was working on that. I did a fellowship up there, and he was working on that at the time. But yes, she is considered the first writer of color.
Right. And okay, next we have Ida B. Wells.
One of my sheroes, one of Daisy Bates' sheroes. She was a journalist, and she was a phenomenal woman, and she fought against lynching and wrote about lynching, and she suffered a lot because of it. But she was definitely a hero or a shero because she stood up during the Jim Crow period when there weren't a lot of women that were standing up. A lot of men were, but women were kind of shuttled to the back. But this woman stood up and she made sure she was heard. And the newspaper, of course, helped her do that.
Right. I heard she was a troublemaker, kind of wherever she
A
went.
good troublemaker, as John Lewis says.
Yeah, a good trouble. Yeah, absolutely. And also a pioneer of investigative journalism, like you said. She documented those lynchings, which up until that point, no one had done.
Right.
It made me think about there was a project called The Counted that documented police officers who fired their weapons, and it resulted in a fatality, in the line of duty. And so that project, nobody had been keeping up with, how many people are dying at the hands of police. And so, the work continues, and she paved the way, for all of that.
And that just goes back, Marsalis, to the need for our newspapers. It really, really does. Because a lot of time, if we aren't documenting it, it's not going to be documented.
Correct.
That's the whole thing about stories and just news and facts.
Correct. Okay. Miss Zora Neale Hurston. Who is she?
Zora Neale Hurston was also a trailblazer and, a independent woman, a writer. Um, she was one of my favorite writers. Uh, I think some people call her writing style kind of folksy, folktale kind of writing,
Right.
down home writing. I love her writing. And she was, you know, she told it like it is. She was also a kind of a historian, ethnographist. She
Mhm.
did a lot of studies and research on our history. Um, she got a lot of fellowships and traveled and did a lot of research. I like the way that she lived her life. She wrote, but she didn't remove herself from the world. She continued to try to find ways to make the world better and to improve our knowledge of ourselves. So I really give her a lot of credit for that. Writers are, a lot of times we just close ourselves up somewhere and we write, and that's fine. But I like the fact that she found a way to do a lot more than just write.
Right. And like you said, there was a little uh, criticism in her time about kind of her style, and people
Hmm.
were saying that this is portraying Black people in a bad light. We're trying to advance and be
Right, right.
educated, but you're portraying us in this light. But Their Eyes Were Watching God is one of my all-time favorite.
Oh yeah, definitely. I
So
loved it. I loved it. I love her writing, period. And
mm,
I'm glad she didn't allow anyone to change her writing style because people really did try.
and that's kind of the message of that novel is kind of the protagonist. She just doesn't care what the townspeople are saying about her and her relationship and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
yeah,
So a little bit of her in there, probably.
exactly. Let's go to again, trying to be as chronological. Let's look at Miss Gwendolyn Brooks.
Do you know I met Gwendolyn Brooks in Little Rock when my son went to Central High School, and I think he may have been 10th grade, and when Gwendolyn Brooks came and spoke at Central High School. And that was my first time meeting her, and it was just amazing. She was a wonderful woman. And when I moved to Chicago, I think she had died, you know, not long before I moved to Chicago. But I think she might have been the first Black female or Black person to receive. Um, uh, was it which award was it that she got? Um,
It's not the Nobel, was it?
Not the Nobel, no, no. It was a writer's award,
Okay.
but she was the first, and her writing is phenomenal and is still considered some of the most authentic poetry um, of anyone's.
I might be thinking about Toni Morrison, which
Oh
let's,
yes.
let's segue to her. She's the first with this Nobel.
Right, right. You're right. Toni Morrison was amazing. No, hers was the writing one, and I'll think of it.
Yeah, it's because we're right here thinking about it.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Let's go to Toni.
I did a talk on Toni not too long ago, talked about what an amazing, brilliant writer she was. Kind of a mystery. I found her to be quite mysterious. Um, Her brilliance sometimes, I think, overwhelms readers
Mm-hmm.
uh, because she's so far above us in
Mm-hmm.
her thinking and her writing. But she's a beautiful writer. She is a brilliant writer, and she grew up in Ohio, which I found kind of strange. She grew up in Ohio. Her parents were from the South, but her father saw. I understand that he saw a lynching uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the South, and he immediately left, and they moved to Ohio, and that's where they grew up. And her name is not Toni, and I can't think of the name right now. but she went by Tony. People started calling her Tony, so she always went by Tony. But she won she was the first in so many different awards for writers and for Black writers. She won an amazing number of awards, and she was the first one to win the Nobel.
Awesome. Okay, let's talk about Miss Nikki.
I looked it up real quick.
Okay.
She was born Chloe Ardelia Wofford.
Mm-hmm. Chloe, yes. It's nothing like Tony, but yes. And I also see that Gwendolyn Brooks won. She was the first African American author to win a Pulitzer. I thought it was a writing, but it was a Pulitzer for writing.
Awesome.
And she was appointed the Poet Laureate of the state of Illinois.
Very good. Okay, Miss Nikki Giovanni.
And, unfortunately, I don't know a lot about Nikki Giovanni, but I did see her. She came to the University of Arkansas when I was there. Mm-hmm. And her poetry is beautiful, and I love her performances. But I don't know a lot about her, but I can tell you she is one of the more independent women poets that I know. I've always admired her for being her. Mm-hmm. No matter what, she's her. And I really don't know a lot about her early years.
Right. I'm like you. I saw her at University of Arkansas at Pine Bluff. Mm-hmm. And, like you said, she told it like it was.
Yes.
And she was very, as we say, kind of not gutter, I don't know if that's the word, but she was very straightforward and forthcoming, and just her poetry kind of takes on that kind of style.
Straight with no chaser.
Exactly. So yeah, that's Nikki Giovanni. Okay, let's talk about Miss Dove, Rita Dove.
Yeah, the first American Poet Laureate. Correct. Yes. And I don't know as much about her as I should know. I think she's from Ohio. She's from that Midwestern area as well. And I think didn't she teach before she was appointed as Poet Laureate?
Mm-hmm. Is she still with us?
You may know more about her, Marsalis, than I do, but I just know she's a great poet. I have her books, so I've read her poetry, and it's beautiful.
Well, you hit the main points, her being a poet laureate, and I just wanted to say that she's still with us, which is
she is with us. You're right. She and Nikki Giovanni.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about Miss Walker, Alice Walker.
Oh, she was absolutely my favorite writer for so long. I definitely love her writing, and she has been around for a long time. And a good friend of mine was writing her biography, and she passed away just a couple of, I'd say about a month ago at the most. So my question is, what's going to happen with her biography now? I'm sure it was close to being finished because Sharon had been working on it for several years. So, but this woman is just brilliant. I understand she's had a lot of personal turmoil. Mm-hmm. But her writing, I fell in love with her writing years and years and years ago.
Mm-hmm. And probably her most notable work would probably be The Color Purple.
Yes.
Her from, and it was adapted into a movie that was directed by Steven Spielberg, and just garnered a lot of critical acclaim. And that was funny to me as we've been sitting here. I just thought about, there's kind of an Oprah connection with all of this, because you got Alice Walker and Toni Morrison. I don't know all the intricacies of that, but somehow like Oprah keeps finding her way into the conversation with Maya Angelou, all these people.
Well, Oprah loves books for one thing, and she loves writing. So I'm sure that these are some of her favorite writers and poets as well.
Good. And so coming more to modern times, let's look at Miss Nikkole Hannah-Jones.
Oh, yeah. I was at the Dallas Literary Festival this weekend. I was so excited that I was invited to be on a panel there. But
Mhm.
Nikkole Hannah-Jones was going to be the speaker yesterday, I think, yesterday or today. And I was so sad that I missed her. She's fiery. I love her. I love her courage. Um, I love how brilliant she is and how she brought it home with the
Mhm.
1619 project. And I know she's had so many fights with people who say this book should not have been written, that
Mhm.
it is racist.
Mhm.
But I think most of us know that it's history. She's telling what is true history, and she's not coloring in it. Uh, and I think she is a shero. She's one of my sheroes too.
Yes. And either yesterday or today, she told me. I mean, she didn't tell me, but she told Twitter that she almost missed her flight to Dallas.
Oh,
So,
did she?
yeah, but she made it to the convention. But I follow her on Twitter, and she got a name check even today during the hearings for the Supreme Court Justice nominee Ketanji.
Critical theory.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
invoking that critical race theory and kind of how Nikkole plugs into all of that.
Yes.
And it's funny that we bring her up because she talked about the struggles that Ida B. Wells had to go through and how she's
Mhm.
facing a lot of the same things in real time. So
Mhm.
history,
Mhm.
is kind of repeating
Yes.
itself with her.
Yes.
But I agree. I think that her stance and
Mhm.
her just determination is commendable.
Yes.
In the face of so much flack and criticism, so
It's so sad that she's had to go through so much. And I think if it wasn't the times that we're in right now, the divisiveness that's going on, I
mhm,
don't think she would get the kind of pushback that she's gotten. I mean, it was a brilliant, piece of work,
correct,
but people have found a way to
mm,
make it be a wedge.
right. And it's
Hmm.
it's an ad hominem. If they can't
Hmm.
attack your argument, they attack you. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and last but not least, Miss Gorman. Who is this young lady?
Miss Gorman. Is she? Where's her picture?
Amanda Gorman.
Yeah, yeah. Amanda, who wowed the world at the inauguration of Joe Biden. I've called her the reincarnation of Maya Angelou. That's what I've called her. She is just amazing with her courageous poetry. And obviously, she can do a lot of different things, and she's going to go far. She's going to
Oh,
go far.
oh yes. So good. I just wanted to give a primer on some of these ladies, and all of them could be a night unto themselves.
Right,
I,
right.
like I shared with you earlier that I kind of made my list of top 10, and history.com agreed with me. So shout out to the staff at Henderson. Here she is.
Ah, there she is. I have that picture. I have that very picture somewhere. Yes. I
Yeah.
mean, she went all over the world with that. She went
Mm.
all over the world. I was
And
so proud of that young lady.
and we all watched that inauguration together, and
Yeah.
this historic nature of it, and that iconic yellow
Yes.
jacket,
Yes.
and the red headband, and everything, and just so much power in just a little uh,
Right.
a body.
Right.
Just,
Right.
like you said, she's
Absolutely.
going to go really far.
She
Um,
did.
I wanted to say shout out to Henderson State University. I took an ethnic and gender studies course
Oh,
there.
did you?
Kind of gave me a background in all of this. So
Great.
yeah, a lot of these titles are available at the Garland County Library. So that's a good segue. Did you have any closing thoughts, Miss Janice?
No, I just want to say thank you, Marsalis and Paul and Garland County Library. Thank you. Any library, I love you. I grew up loving libraries. I have a whole story about libraries, but I won't tell that now. But I just thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for the conversation. I've enjoyed it, and you did a great job, you and Paul.
It was phenomenal. Thank you so much for being with us. And taking over to Paul, see if we got anything else. Any questions?
Yes, and thank you very much for being here. This was one of my favorite programs with Marsalis, or just in general so far.
Yeah.
This was a very
Thank you,
enjoyable.
Paul. Thank you all so much.
A few comments about some of the women that you spoke of. Nina says, Nikki Giovanni, unapologetic.
Unapologetic, yes.
And Miss Bat says about Nikkole Hannah-Jones, I love her for writing Project 1619, and I still have not gotten a copy. Want one, though. But you know where to find one.
Yes, so check it out at the library.
And then when I accidentally put up a picture of Maya Angelou for the Amanda Gorman, and Cheryl Batts noticed it, she said, yes, a reincarnation of Maya.
Absolutely.
Claudia says, loved hearing about all these ladies and their contributions. I have had the opportunity to read some of all of their work.
Good. Wonderful.
And then I thought of a quick question.
Okay.
As Bill Clinton's personal diarist, have you ever been portrayed in film, or do you expect to?
I don't know. I wouldn't know. I don't think so.
Who would you want to play you? Who would you want to play yourself? If
oh my God. Angela Bassett, maybe. I love her.
You took that out of my head. I was thinking.
Really? I did. Yeah. Thanks for the question, then, Paul. I like that.
Well, now you can reach out to your agent and get that going. And
I'll do that.
Yeah. And you could be the focus. Bill Clinton will be a cameo.
Oh, right. I don't think so.
You could do a biopic on your life just from the little that we've heard tonight. I'm sure there's plenty of stories out there that you didn't even touch on. Like you said, you have a whole nother library. I think we got time for the library story. I want to hear it.
No, I talked to the Library Association one year, and I told them how much I loved books when I was growing up, and I loved to read. And we used to drive by the library every day going to school when I was little, and I couldn't go in the library. That was during the years of segregation. So I wasn't able to go in the library. So when I went to high school, I loved libraries so much, and there was a library at the school that they made me head of the library. They gave me the key to the library, and I could go in the library whenever I wanted to. I would, check books out for people, all kinds of things. So everybody knew I had this deep, deep love for libraries. So I really do love you guys.
So you're the Black Matilda.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, see, I'm so glad that you shared that, because people have no conception of our story. So again, thank you so much for just sharing tonight. It was just phenomenal.
Thank you all very much.
Absolutely. All right. Well, our next Perceptions of Color episode is next month on Tuesday, April 19th. And remind us what we have in store.
April 19th, we are commemorating 30 years from the Garland County Desegregation Agreement, which was signed April 20th of 1992. So we're 30 years removed from that. There's 7 school districts in Garland County, and I'm calling it Deseg Revisited. We're going to take a look at where we were at that time and where we are today. And so I'm looking forward to that conversation. Also, it's somebody pretty special's birthday that month. Mr. Elmer Beard. So we're going to take a time to honor him at that time. So looking forward to our April Perceptions of Color for sure.
Absolutely. And we will be seeing you, Mr. Weatherspoon, before that, actually, here at the library.
Yeah.
We are having an event 2 weeks from tonight, and that is a Garland County candidate forum here at the library. There is in-person seating, and it will also be live streamed on the library's Facebook and YouTube pages, like many of our events like this one, and that will be recorded as well. So candidates will get a few minutes to speak, and Marsalis is going to be a moderator and timekeeper along with Diana Hampo of US Stations. So 2 weeks from tonight, starting at 6 p.m., candidates will be here to meet and greet at 5:30. So if you want to be an informed voter, I encourage you to come and check that out or watch it online.
Absolutely.
And it will not be a debate. They'll just be speaking. So Marsalis' moderating duties should be pretty straightforward. Knock on wood.
Right. We're hoping for the best. And I just wanted to say with that, the NAACP is a nonpartisan organization, but we do encourage you to please be registered and please exercise your right to vote. So if you've heard anything we've shared tonight, just the struggles that we've had to go through to get those rights and to exercise them. So please make sure you're registered. And what is a good segue into our Hot Springs branch of the NAACP. We meet every second Saturday at 2 p.m. Please become a member. Our website is NAACP HS6013.org. And so if you would like more information, you can go to our website, and we would love to have you as a part of our branch. All right. We're going to sign off again. Thank you, Ms. Kearney. Thank you, Paul, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Take care.